Welcome to Healist, where we discover new ways to heal. I'm so honored to have my friend Alex on here today. You guys, he is so special. He has worked with me, like helped me. I've had him do sessions for me. I call him like a soul whisperer. I mean, he is so wildly intuitive and so tapped in. And I'll get into that in a little bit. First, I want to have him introduce himself. So, Alex, I would love for you to tell the listeners who you are and what you're up to in the world.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here, Dawn. It's really a pleasure and a privilege.
Thank you.
So, thank you. It's wonderful to be here with you. And well, if I should have to introduce myself in some way, I would say indeed, one of the things that I'm very passionate about is soul whispering, because there's not a lot of that out there. And what it means is that as an intuitive facilitator of well-being, because that's how I deem myself, a facilitator of well-being. It's one of my favorite tools because it's speaking to your soul directly regarding your life plan.
Mm.
And whether it be through the use of tarot, because tarot is a beautiful universal language that soul likes very much because it's symbolic and it's very analogical and it tells stories and it's full of many ways to convey loving messages in our soul's evolution or our human evolution's path. So I use tarot as one of the tools, but I also do this facilitation of soul conversation directly without the use of the cards. It can be both ways.
Wow.
And when you speak to the soul, one of the things that happens is that you realize that there's so much wisdom, so much joy, knowingness, and already many set things that soul wants to experience in your body, in your personality. And this is very free of judgment. There's never judgment towards the personality. Maybe we as personalities may judge ourselves or other people or criticize, or maybe we don't like the way we look in front of a mirror, but soul never does that.
Yeah.
And I've been doing this type of work for 30 years, Dawn.
Oh, God, I
Like,
cannot even imagine what you've seen, but also how you have grown through this work. Do you feel like having this incredible privilege to kind of connect to somebody's soul has opened you up to new ways of seeing yourself?
oh, totally.
Yeah.
Now, the only privilege I see, honestly, is the fact that I accept that this connection exists and that it can be achieved.
Mhm.
But it's not like I have a special talent. We should all be able to connect to the soul that we are because that's us. You
Yeah.
know, I used to channel in the form of mentoring other people,
Mhm.
angels for many, many years. I worked with angels, with archangels, ascended masters. That started back in around, it's already 30 years, 1995.
Whoa.
And this stemmed from my quest to feel better myself because I was not feeling very well with myself before 1994.
Okay.
So I was looking for methodologies that would help me feel at ease with myself. I was not at peace. And I found Transcendental Meditation. I changed my diet through Ayurvedic counseling. And I was
Yeah.
an Ayurvedic doctor who diagnosed me and he said, okay, your metabolism works this way and your diet is totally off. And that is creating a lot of havoc in your system and systems. So you have to change your diet. And then I also added the Maharishi yoga principles. So I did a regime. I followed a regime. And over the course of 1 year, I also became very passionate about these techniques because I did see results very, very quickly. I said,
Wow.
I believe how good I feel in so little time when I was usually unable to concentrate. I was not able to focus in what it felt like I had ADD and I was very anxious all the time. So I changed the diet, I started meditating, and I started doing yoga. And in 1 month, I was a totally different person. It was very, very quick. And 1 year later, through the advanced techniques of this particular technology, like I know there's a lot out there that works for people. this is the one that works for me. I cannot say the best or the worst, but it worked for me. And I very quickly realized that I had always been an intuitive since I was a child. And
Okay.
just started opening up very quickly. And slowly the angels started coming in and saying,
Wow. What was that like? Because I'm sure our listeners, some might not have any experience with that. What is that like?
well, to start with, I was a skeptic. I was a very
Okay.
strong skeptic. I was very oriented towards, I couldn't say I was a mystic or spiritually oriented at all. There was no practice of religion in my house whatsoever. I come from a Jewish background, but I was never infused in a religious environment, you
Okay.
know, and some of the culture, the language, speaking Hebrew, Yiddish, all of that, but there was no emphasis on religion at home whatsoever. And
Okay.
so I didn't have that background to say, okay, I'm very spiritual and I know about angels, and now I'm going to open up shop and start for people. It was exactly the opposite. I looked for transcendental meditation because it had like 400 studies in several universities. And
Mhm.
I said, okay, this is demonstratable. So I'm going to practice something that has scientific background.
Yeah.
So when the angels started showing up, which was literally overnight, I just went to one of my friends who had been in my advanced group of meditation. He said, you want to come over to my house? We're going to do a meditation. And then he said, we're going to work with Archangel Raphael because this is Thursday. And I said, well, okay, whatever that means, I'm in, and it was a beautiful experience. The energy was absolutely amazing. But then I was literally that night woken, well, about 2 in the morning. My hands, you know what mudras are?
Yes. Yeah.
Like movements of the hands or positions of the hands. My hands were moving on their own, doing these mudras. They woke me up, and every time that I looked, like they did like this and this and this, and then like almost like coded language. And then they went like this, and then my whole body was filled with energy, and it wanted to dance. I didn't want to dance, but my
You're
body.
like, I'm tired. What's going on here?
Okay, I said I'll do it just until it's done. I wasn't scared at all. I
Okay.
was surprised and observing. By now, because I had already learned what yogic flying means in the Maharishi context, where your body does some things that involuntary movements that your body can displace from one place to another. You jump uh, just out of the energy that
Okay.
is being activated in your chakras. I said, what else is possible? Anything's possible if this is possible. So my body was doing this, and I just called my Ayurvedic doctor and friend. I said, this is happening. Can I see you? Can we talk over coffee? Because, my body started doing this almost like a Hindu dance. It was
Wow.
very weird,
That's
but
so fascinating.
it was very weird. And I said, okay. And I was just so full of energy, Dawn.
Yeah.
And my body going like this, almost like a warrior dance until it kind of dwindled away. And then I went back to bed. I said, okay, I'll find out tomorrow. And I called this guy and said, can you please explain what's going on? He said, oh, how fun. That was the first thing that came out of his mouth. How fun. Yeah, let's meet. And I explained to him over coffee what was going on. And we were in this nice, coffee parlor, and I said, this is what happened. I said, well, maybe someone's trying to get a message through you. And why don't you try automatic writing? I said, what's that? I had no idea. Okay. He said, well, just grab a napkin, grab a pen, and maybe something happens. And it did. You know, my hand started to move on its own. And this being introduced himself as my big brother's angel, gave me a message that turned out to be true much later.
Whoa.
Uh, he said, if this and this continues to happen in your brother's home, this is what's going to happen. And it did. Eventually, it did. And I never said this to my brother because first, we were not getting ideally along back then. We were, not close to each other. Now we are. but also because of my own skepticism. You have to understand
Yeah.
that the first 5 years when I experienced this, first of all, the first year I didn't want it. I
Okay.
just, I said, okay. And then they introduced themselves, like a whole team of angels said, we are your angel team and you have a contract with us. And you said that you would be speaking about angels. I said, what? I my major is in literature, Dawn. I studied literature, I studied professional acting and singing.
I
So
love.
this was totally off. It's
Yeah.
not like I wasn't doing anything that was facilitating other people. I was already very much immersed in the tarot energy by then. I
Mhm.
loved it. I absolutely loved tarot. I studied about 200 different oracles
Wow.
before I started, working with other people. But this was a totally different level of the game. And I said, I know nothing about angels, and said, oh, by the way, you won't read any books regarding angels. We don't want you to be contaminated by any other kind of influence or energy. We'll teach you. So my teaching was vertical, not horizontal. I
Oh,
didn't have people teaching me about angels. I had angels teaching me about angels. It was hard. It was hard because I knew that would be lonely. And it was also hard because back then this was not an open subject.
100%. Yeah, I can imagine.
And for the first many, many months, I said, I don't even know if I believe in you. I said, I'm not even sure. And I was hoping every once in a while that it would just, fade away and I'd go back to my singing and my writing and my acting because it really threw me off course according to my own standards and plan.
Which is very much how sometimes soul works, right? We have this human plan, and soul and our divine support team has a completely different, higher plan for us, but it's so hard to see in those moments. So I can imagine that you're going, what is happening? I'm supposed to be an actor or do these other things, and yet you're being drawn over to this other way of being.
Yeah, to a completely unpopular area. Like very few people were talking angels back then.
Yeah, what year was this?
This is 1995.
Oh, yeah, no, nobody, nobody was talking. I mean, no, wow.
And although in my family, anything cultural was very much applauded, and I had a grandfather who was an encyclopedia. He created encyclopedias, he wrote them, or gathered the information. And literature was applauded in my family, also culture, but not the psychic business or the intuitive reality. So very gently, my mother wanted to push me back into just dedicating myself to directing, acting, writing plays, or writing books.
How
You
many
know,
years did it take for you to fully embrace it?
5.
Okay, so it's a 5 year mark. Okay.
Yeah, the first year I said no to channeling for other people, except a very small group, just to understand and experience scientific mind, what was going on. Just those I trusted very, very close to me who accepted this type of information and language said, yeah, I want a channeling from you and see what happens. And he said, well, you're dead on and very accurate, whatever. And then one of those friends kind of pushed me into the scene by telling one of his friends outside of the circle what I did.
Okay.
So he was supposedly coming to my house for a tarot reading and said, no, I won't move out of your house. Like, I won't move from here until you channel my angel. I said, it's not what I do. This is not public service. I said, well, he was 15. I was kind of angry and I said, the angels are doing this. I said, okay, I'm going to channel for him and then just let him go.
Mhm.
This guy asked the stupidest questions, I have to say. So it was just like these questions. I'm going to have, am I going to have money? I want a car, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what I told him, but he loved it.
Mhm.
Then he recommended me to someone else, and that someone else brought somebody else, and it started like a little, you know,
Wow.
chain of events, and people started asking for sessions. And it was good that I didn't have the character back then to say no to people. That's
And
how it started. And
wow. Oh my gosh. So when you started hearing this wisdom from the angels,
Mm.
did you, because I know as a, I've been channeling for 20 years, and I know that it took me many, many years of channeling before I started to listen to it and go, maybe I should start embodying some of these qualities. Maybe I should start doing some of these things, before it was almost like I could do it, but I wasn't embodying the
Ah,
energy. I wasn't on that spiritual path of that quite yet, like the real deeper healing path. So I'm curious for you, when did it really, so because it's one thing to be able to do it, but then to be initiated and say, okay, I'm really going to embody and trying to really bring this forth in my life. Because I know you are like so in your integrity with your work. So I'm so curious about that for you.
to be honest, right before the angels, I was already working intensely on myself and wanting to embody what it means to be a healthy individual.
Yeah. Okay.
And I had created one single workshop that I called the strategy of values, like human values, universal values. It was called La Estrategia de los Valores in Spanish, the strategy of values. I still have a little manual. I
Oh,
said, this is powerful stuff. I don't know. I came up with it in combining what I learned from psychology, philosophy, and literature, because in literature, you learn a little bit of everything in the literature major. And I wanted to bring something to people that would help them transform their lives. I was also doing tarot, which is incredibly deep and philosophical and universal. So, taking from those instances, I had already created something, but this was completely different.
wow.
So, um, that's how the path started. I also was taking notes because since everything started with automatic writing for 1 year, and I felt three different notebooks, like it was three diaries.
Wow.
And from those diaries, much later in 2000, the year 2000, I was introduced to a publishing house in Mexico, a small one that wanted to publish my work. So I had to edit the personal and kept the universal. And that's where my first book, it's no longer in circulation right now. Hopefully I'll revive it some way to, if it's still up to date. But those were the first universal messages of the angels. And I did pay a lot of attention to what they were saying to me
Mhm.
regarding love, regarding forgiveness, regarding the new age, what they called it back then, new thought now, changes in the world. There were a lot of things they said, Dawn, that came to be. You
Yeah.
know, they did warn me that this was going to be a time where there was going to be a lot of polarity and a lot of chaos, and people were going to be wondering what to hold on to and to get ready because there was going to be a lot of people wanting some kind of support. So
Mhm.
this is why we're here, I guess.
Yes. And since I've been lucky enough to experience your work, I I was telling you before we even hit record that being a soul whisperer and really speaking to the soul like you do, that it's not just shallow information. It's not just like you said, like, am I gonna get this house, or am I gonna get a new car? Those things are fun, but that's not probably, the territory of the soul, if you will, right? The soul's like, hey, I want you to be living in integrity and alignment. And so when I had my personal session with Alex, I was going through a lot of things. I was actually just in this very transformative time. And I remember one of the things that we work with, because he does this incredible spread that he created with the tarot. And he was helping me work with the devil card, which is about fears and addictions and all these things. And I had a big fear at that time because I was in this custody thing with my former, and, wanting to move and all this stuff. And anyways, I remember your words were so profound of like, you have to face your fears, Dawn, and you have to really, your soul has designed this whole experience for you so that you can, clear this and move through this. And this is what's on. I mean, it was so profound, and also really it was like an invitation where I felt like I could just, like, part of me was like, I don't want to do that. That's just, it's too much, right? And then there was another part of me, this deep resonance within that was like, this is so true. Like, this is my path. And it, like, we couldn't even have made it up because you pulled all the cards randomly. And I just happened to be going through this court experience, and the card that was pulled for that was the justice card. I remember it was in the justice position. So I just remember how deep that was. But Alex, when you do this kind of work now and you're working with the tarot and the soul, what are the themes that typically come through for people? Because our listeners, they've probably never experienced anything like this. So when you work with people, like, what are the things that the soul is like, hey, this is what we get to work on?
Okay, so there's different categories. I could categorize in two very, very different ways depending on time and opportunity and the person itself or herself, you know. Soul was saying right now, soul is anything but shallow.
A
You know,
100%.
there's a passion for life and there's a passion for learning about life. And even the contrast or polarities or life of life are very interesting and learning experience for the soul,
Mhm.
because we can only learn this if we embody a character. Just like actors, you learn from your character certain traits that you might read it in the script, but until you are on the scene and you finally interacting and you can draw on those emotions that are necessary for the play, you
Mhm.
don't really realize how much you're transformed by the character itself. So soul knows a few things in a script.
Mhm.
Is what we're trying to derive from a reading is a script. And in this script, depending on the person, some of the universal aspects, I will explain two categories. One of them is what I call the heal system, because H is health, you know, what brings health into your life. It's not just the physical, it's the emotional health in your work, health in your mentality, health in your creativity and your interactions with other people. That's H. The E is the evolution, the expansion, and the awareness. The A is abundance, which is not just money, like feeling fulfilled in life, satisfied in life, and also feeling connected to the flow of life. Like I'm in the right place at the right time, and I feel very satisfied, and I can feel the joy of who I am or what I'm experiencing right now. And the L is love.
Mhm.
So those four categories go into the standard reading.
Okay.
Love is not just towards another person as many people would think, because a lot of people, they first want to know about the mate,
Yep.
like relationship, but they quite easily forget the love towards themselves, which comes first.
Yes, 100%.
In the mathematical process, one comes before two.
Yes.
So loving yourself first can allow you to endeavor relationship in a more balanced way.
Mhm.
So we look for that in the readings, because tarot, what it does, or the soul whispering,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be the cards; it's a combination. But in ultimately, where it will lead you is to be more aware of what you need to work on.
Yes.
There's two categories. You had a reading that I call the tarot reading for a lifetime. And what we look for in that particular 2 hour reading is the big cycles for you to understand what you have already covered as soul. That is your dharma. That means it can turn into part of your mission because you've already mastered some things that will be signaled out. This is almost like in an adventure game.
Yeah.
You have a pouch, and what do you take as tools in that pouch that you've already, either in the game you buy it, but in life you acquire it.
Hmm.
Maybe you've developed strength, wisdom, solidarity, being very faithful, or being full of faith, or someone who's already expressed and has no problem telling the truth. But there's also some challenges. That's what makes life interesting and fun, and very exciting, and
Oh.
sometimes very disturbing, but
Yeah.
still,
It can be
you know,
challenging. Yes.
Yes, but that's the karma. And the way angels describe karma for me in the 21st century, because your terms have to change because it's been, you can't think in terms of a person who lived 2,500 years ago. Karma now, if we are to be a little more up to date and a little wiser, would be the ongoing investigation, which takes away the weight of a karma, like, oh no, you were a horrible person in a past life, and now you have to pay, or you have to face the consequences, action, reaction. This
Mhm.
is more compassion. It is, I'm still learning, and my karma is what I'm still learning. And it's actually pointed out in the reading, the areas where you still have to work on. And the 22 cards or 22 positions are 22 themes or categories where you're learning something.
Wow.
There's even a position for your father and your mother and your lineage, mother's lineage, father's lineage, and we can pinpoint, oh, you still have to work on some things, or you have all these blessings coming from your family that you need to
Mhm.
harness, and to hone those skills in a way. So those are the categories that are very popular when we're doing a reading, John.
Yeah.
All about evolution and finding more joy in life and being more at ease with yourself and accepting yourself as you are.
And that is so wildly helpful because I know for me, when I had mine with you, it helped me see some of the areas that I was like, oh yeah, I recognize that in myself. I see that. I've worked on some of these things. And then there was the kind of like maybe a couple blind spots where I was like, oh my gosh. And the biggest piece for me and why I always go back to you is because I want to evolve as a soul, just like our listeners. I'm sure they're going, hey, yeah. I mean, for some, they might not even know what their karma or dharma is that they're working on, right? But it's that evolution of showing, like believing that this life is a school, like you said, it's a kind of like a play or a script, and we're acting all these things out. And instead of just being kind of on autopilot or reactionary, it's really understanding this is happening for me to
Mm.
grow and to evolve and be the best person. And what I love about this work and really being connected to our soul and God or what source, whatever somebody wants to call it, is that you start to see there's this like meaning behind like pouring through your life,
Mhm.
right? Like even the challenges are there to bring you to a higher level of who you are if you allow it to be that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm being told not to forget to mention the following, because it's not just the categories, it's more like the objective of the session in itself, which is what I'm looking for. It's like almost like three-color flag. So what I do is help people to find their real mission, block their utmost potential, and to fulfill their real purpose. And in the more practical sense as well, like to really achieve goals, but based on mission consciousness and on blocking what's there that's impeding the progress. So whether it's tarot, there's also the essential transmutation, which is part two. you know One thing is to give all this information, and a lot of people go like, okay, you gave me the information, but how
Yeah.
now I have to look for, do I have to do family constellation, or do I go to get a massage or Reiki, or what do I do? That's why I have more tools to help people transform that or unblock that in my own school
Yeah.
project. So there's those two branches: information, transformation.
Oh my. So when you have been doing all this and you're helping others, what is your mission right now? Because I know you're supporting people with these things. I know you just came out with an incredible book, which you'll have to tell our listeners about, but what has your soul told you your mission is right now? I'm so curious.
Well, it continues to be the same. It's like just share the information that helps people find their mission. That's not going to change. I'm a mission finder for people, or a mission rememberer. I remind you of your mission,
Mhm.
help you get back on track, take away, not me, I don't take away, you take away with my assistance whatever's blocking that, and that you really find yourself achieving your goals with greater flow and ease and joy. I want people to be the highest version of themselves.
Which
And
makes life so beautiful.
that's it. That's it. And continues to be like, I try to keep it simple. There's no other mission for me. Like the tools, I have 50 different tools.
Mhm.
Tools don't matter, but the result is what matters. Is that's why I offer to people, and I will continue to write more books and to produce more information that is helpful and to clear that space for people.
I love that. Now, I know you started out saying like way back, you were working with the Ayurvedic doctor, doing the transcendental meditation and all that stuff. What are your practices now as somebody who is able to commune with higher consciousness? Like, what are some of your practices that help you right now in your life?
Let me call myself boringly consistent. It's what's worked for me, and I'll explain why. I'll
Yeah.
explain why. Because we have a lot of the next shiny object syndrome in our society right now. So what's new? What's next? What's new? What's next? What's worked for me is to continue. I'm a great believer of continuity. Even if I'm an Aquarius and I love innovation and I continue to bring forth new tools,
Yes.
the what's next guy. But for my own practice, it's always the same is I do the meditation, I do the exercise. Sometimes it will be yoga. Now I'm doing muscle booster and all these kinds of things, to tonify my body. That's the one thing that's changed a little bit, maybe. I continue to do my healthy diet as much as I can. you know, yeah, I do follow some cravings and pay my price for it, but affirmations, and I continue like since I'm working with people, and every time I do so, there's focus, intention, visualization, meditation, positive transformation. I derive a lot of well-being from that. So by doing my work with other people, I also have a chance to maybe meditate 3, 4 times in one day.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always loved that part of the job. Yeah, it's pretty fun to get to.
And, and I do have to say that fun should be part of the equation. So I do enter my more childhood or my inner child modality. Once I'm done with work, I become a child and maybe I'll watch a cartoon or a movie. I love to read books because literature is my major, of course. So reading, writing is a great passion of mine. Writing songs, passion of mine. So everybody should find their own little niche where they find great pleasure. They take pleasure in either cooking or visiting nature, connecting to friends, whatever makes you tick.
Yeah. If you, for our listeners, when they're kind of new on their healing path and with
Yes.
all your wisdom that you've acquired over these years, where would you tell them to start? Like if somebody was just like new to healing or they want to like get started on the path, what would you say that would be a good area of focus for them?
I think that a general focus on being aware of our own qualities is very valuable. Like, what is it that that people recognize in you
Mhm.
that is valuable? That would be almost like if you were a flower, what kind of perfume, what kind of scent are you giving out to the world? Some people give out natural joy.
Mhm.
Some people give out natural peace, like, oh, when I'm with you, I feel so peaceful, or when I'm with you, I feel so happy. Like you will know through the recognition of other people regarding your qualities and values uh, what your starting point is, because it should be simple because it's there already. One of the things, Dawn, and I will write a book about this because the first information I received from angels that has been kind of the medular or the core information energy that continues to be even in the book, the 4 quadrants of evolution, is mm, that your true mission is not what you do, but your emanation in life,
I
like your projection, your energy projection. I like to give this example. Imagine two children going into primary school, So one walks in, makes a funny face, and everybody laughs their heads off. Like everybody just can't stop laughing. He's so funny, and everybody knows this. They've never seen this child. This child is not with a diploma like, oh, I studied 5 years, in comedy club. No, no, he's just funny, period. And then another child sees him and tries to do the same, tells a joke, makes a face, and nobody laughed. It's that. He's not funny because it's not his scent. He's not meant to be funny. Maybe he's deep, or maybe he's strong, or maybe he will be your best truth sayer or storyteller, like the nations. Like
Yeah.
the nations in USA and Canada and Alaska, they had like storyteller, truth sayer, healer, warrior, pathfinder, whatever. We have those talents, and we
Mhm.
just have to hone those talents and work on them. But we know what we're good at, and we know what we're not good at. I'll never be good at football, basketball. Like even when I throw a paper to the waste basket, it always falls out of the basket. I go like, there we go again. Never a basketball player.
Oh
You
my
know,
gosh. Yeah.
not good at sports, so I shouldn't try and insist. I better find what I'm good at. And we already know that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's an environment that goes very well with that quality. I tell some of my clients and students, if you're a joyous person, please don't find a job at a funeral home. Just don't do that.
Yeah. Wouldn't be good for you.
I'm not going to appreciate you telling jokes or being funny at a funeral home. Just find your right environment as if you were a flower. Just think of yourself a flower, and then you'll understand. And then the right tools for right character,
Yeah.
right tools for right character, right environment for right tools and character will bring you great clarity as to what your soul chose for you, instead of just, even if you have long legs, short legs, big body, like you're bulky or you're very skinny, all of that goes into the equation of who you're meant to be. I'm not meant to be a sumo,
Yeah.
what do you call
Wrestler.
them?
Sumo
Rest,
wrestler. Yeah.
sumo wrestler. I'm not built for sumo wrestling.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
very skinny, I've
Yeah.
always been. So,
Knowing where, yeah, it's like staying in your lane. And that's such a great question for our listeners to ask themselves, and maybe even to ask some of their dear friends for that reflection of like, when you think of me, what are the things that you think about? What are my gifts? And especially if they're kind of confused about what that looks like for themselves, but just really understanding that they do have these like essences, like you're saying, these soul essences that come out and people see. And instead of, trying to swim against the current, figuring these things out and getting back into the flow of your life. And I love what you said earlier. I often say this to my clients too. And they say, well, what's my purpose? So many people in the past is that they come to me, oh, I need you to help me find my purpose. And I say, well, I think your purpose is a being, it's not a doing. You could be it anywhere you go, at the grocery store, in your work, with your kids. It's not something that you literally have to compartmentalize and make it your job.
mm,
I think that that's opened a lot of people up to be a little bit more liberated with it, instead of just trying to, figure out what that thing is. It's like who you get to be in this life. And I love how you're saying it, like the character you're playing in the script of this particular movie of this lifetime.
yeah, in my case, I had always been intuitive, but I was suffering quite a bit when I was not recognizing that. Part of my being almost ADD was because I was very intuitive, but I was not aware of that. So I was not letting my mind free flow. I was just worried that I was not being able to focus and concentrate in a practical way. So once I finally started using the tools that led to the reopening of my channel, because it was blocked through trauma and loss, and a lot of people go through that, or most people go through that, I kind of closed that channel to the degree that I didn't even remember how intuitive I was as a child. I did have conversations with invisible guides when I was 12. I still remember in summer camp once that we had this picnic and everybody eating watermelon in one of these summer camps. And I got up off the table and everybody, or almost everybody, was gone. And I felt something like literally pulled me back. I felt an energy like, hey, you pick up some things. There's a lot of garbage around. I heard it. I
Wow.
said, started discussing in my head, like this was totally telepathic. I said, why me if I didn't, throw all that garbage around? And they said, if you don't do it, nobody will. I said, oh, fine. I said, fine. So I started putting, the watermelon, like everybody left a mess. So I started just, putting that in the trash and other people followed. But until I didn't do it, other people didn't. So I said, okay. And I was angry, at my guides fight. I didn't even know who I was discussing with. It was just the normal thing. As a child, you don't question, you just experience. And
Yeah.
then I forgot all about it. And then 12 years later, 13 years later, this surfaces again when I was ready.
Wow.
But everybody has the intuition. It's not like I'm the only one. It's just I've worked on it.
Harnessed it. Yeah.
Everybody has some level of intuitive
Or,
skills, some
of
level.
course. It's so interesting when you're saying that story. I remember I was in high school and I was at a stoplight with my best friend was driving. So we must have been like 16 or 17. And we were just waiting for the light to turn green. And all of a sudden I heard this like kind of like booming loud voice in my ear. And it said, put your seatbelts on. Because I'll date myself and say this is before seatbelts were required by law. And I just remember like hearing it and turning around and saying to my best friend and my sister, you guys, let's put our seatbelts on. And then as we're snapping in, the light turns green, we turn left and we get hit by a semi, like a semi truck. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, what? I didn't even really have time to process it, but I was like, what was that voice? Like, who was that? And I thought it must have been an angel because it was just booming. And it was like I couldn't ignore it. And it made me turn around and say that within seconds of us getting hit. So I think we all do have it. We all have these moments in our lives. We maybe, some of you, our listeners, can recall their own stories, and I'd love for them to share it in the comments. But yeah, I think everybody's intuitive. It's just you, my friend, have really you're like the Tiger Woods of soul work.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're an expert at it. I do have because we Alex and I both have studied something that's called futuring. So if you guys haven't heard of that, we'll have to share about it more on another episode. But Alex, as far as futuring goes, what do you think? Where do you see healing going? Where do you think where is this kind of when you look into that timeline and kind of think of the energy of what's possible, knowing that the future is like a blank canvas,
Uh-huh.
where do you see healing going for you? What's your take on it?
Well, what I received just now
Mhm.
is the multi word. I heard multitasking is part of the healing, being able to multitask, which is the training we're going through right now with so much going on. We have to multitask. A lot of people have multiple jobs. That didn't happen before.
Mhm.
Like decades ago, people had a one job, 9 to 5, at least in some societies, and everything was quite predictable for the next many decades. And then they retire, period. And end of story. Like everything
Ah,
was cookie cutter business and cookie cutter experiences. Not anymore. We're freer now. And that freedom comes with a responsibility. So we cannot just be looking left and right and wondering, what path we're supposed to take. It's more like what path are we meant to take or want to take? The wanting, we have to heal the awareness of our wanting so we can be multiple taskers in a way that serves us and our creativity. That's one. Also, we become more multidimensional. We're ceasing to be linear, and that's very scary for a lot of people because it involves instead of just consuming, and this is something I'm saying and I said it in my book presentation during the launch the other day. I said, we're supposed to be 8 billion and counting creators in this world instead of 8 billion consumers of reality. It's more like we're supposed to be creators of reality, each our own. And it's a lot less scary to be creator of your own reality as opposed to just consuming whatever the media is throwing out there. I'm not saying it's all negative, but I'm saying it's not me or it's not mine.
Mhm.
What am I doing? Losing so much time, energy, and my guts, and knowing what's going on and the country on the other side of the world. I may feel for them. I'm an empath. You are an empath. We're all empaths, and we're all connected. Yes, but either I'm doing something physical, active, and practical to be involved in that reality, or better not lose too much time on it, just wasting my guts on being ill dignified and protesting against it instead of focusing on the world that I'm here and meant to create.
Mhm.
So I think the healing path is more focused on what we're really meant to do here, Dawn, and it's going to be so much more satisfying because that can ripple out to other people, whether it's a cookie business,
Yeah.
it's gardening for yourself and your neighbors, maybe it's taking care of your dog. Whatever it is, you are entitled, and you are also assigned a little piece of world that you're meant to transform and recreate in your own special way. And if we lose our energy and effort just by being horrified at what's going on outside of our world, we're just going to become very depressed, anxious, fearful, and distracted.
Yes.
So, and to heal that by being the multiple wonder that we are,
Yeah.
how I see it.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's beautiful. It's living in the brilliant future where we believe that we focus on what we want to see in the world versus what we're being fed and programmed to think and believe. And so I love that because of probably a lot of our listeners, it's like, there's so much you can be privy to nowadays, and it's just too much. And so it's really kind of, I have found the more I've gone deeper in my spiritual path, my world has narrowed a little bit. Like I don't take in as much. If I have a deeper question, I usually typically go straight to source, to God in my meditation practice and ask, okay, what do I need to do next? Or show me the way, or whatever it is. And I think that you're right. I love that. The multitasking, being able to live a life that is full of change, but being really grounded. Yeah.
Yes.
That's that's so beautiful. Alex, if somebody wants to work with you, what is your website? So, just so you guys know, Alex is one of my international friends. He's in Mexico. And so, but he works on Zoom, which is why I've been able to work with him. And he speaks Spanish and English. But if somebody wants to work with you, tell me, tell our listeners like
Sure.
whether, yeah, what that looks like.
As easy as going into the website, which is alexlucki.com. I'm Slucki, by the way, but my media team decided to create the website like ALEXLUCKI
Okay.
dot ALEXLUCKI.com.
Okay.
That's one. You can also find me on my Instagram account as at Alex Slucki with an S, Alex SLUCKI.com. No, without the com.
I'll put it in the show notes for everybody so that they can like click on it.
Yeah, just click on the website. You can even WhatsApp me through my website. You can find also my email.
Okay. And are you
So,
any
so
clients right now as far as if somebody wants to, if one of our listeners wants to get one of those, a soul, reading with you, whether tarot or soul whisper, are you
yeah,
taking
of
any clients?
course.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Beautiful.
take in a few clients per day to keep
Okay.
myself balanced and healthy.
Yes.
But yeah, I do it every day, and it's my passion. I love the one-on-ones. I know a lot of people move from one-on-one to group sessions, whatever. I'm an intimist. I
Yeah.
love the one, and even friendships have flourished from that experience. So
Beautiful. Beautiful. Alex, thank you so much for being here today and sharing so many beautiful pearls of wisdom. And for our listeners out there, we would love for you to share this episode with your friends and subscribe. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.